You can live off of less than $2,500 a month in New York City. All it takes is a little bit of mischief, a little bit of character building, and a sprinkle of tax fraud. The reality is people think New York City is an expensive place to live.
I think it's absorbent.
I definitely feel the squeeze.
And I'm gonna show you how it's not. Rent is obviously one of the first things people point to when talking about New York being expensive.
Can't really afford that. My rent actually just went up another $1,200 per month.
And yeah, sure, you can definitely find an apartment that costs as much as one of Elon's toys. But you'd be surprised how little you can pay in some areas of the city. Look at your average decent-sized city. Dallas, $3,000 a month for a 2-bedroom. Nashville, $2,000 for a 1-bedroom. Or Seattle, where it's $3,400 for a studio. Yeah, in these cases, you're definitely getting a lot more for what you're paying for, like a washer and dryer, new appliances, a will to live. But do you get to stare into a millionaire's townhouse and just think about how different your life would be if you paid more attention in school? No, you don't. Don't get that in other places. I know plenty of people that say they can't live in New York because the rent is too high. And then I find out that I pay less than them in rent. For reference, I pay $1,700, which is a lot, but for any decent-sized city, that's really nothing out of the ordinary. And I live in a good neighborhood. I live in Chelsea within Manhattan. When people talk about New York rent being expensive, they look at the average 1-bedroom, which is like $3,800 a month, which is a lot. But you have to remember that that's an average. There's a whole luxury market for the global wealth that skews that average super high. But then there's a whole other market for just regular people where it's actually like pretty okay. A lot of it's in Brooklyn, a lot of it is decent. Swallow your pride, get a roommate. Laundromats really aren't that bad, and AC's overrated anyway, right? With roommates and a proper location, and also maybe getting an apartment in the winter when there's more deals, you could get away with spending less than $1,000 in rent. Boom. Now rent is no longer an excuse. Food is a hit or miss when it comes to cost. And I was shocked in both directions for this. For instance, if you're eating out all the time, it's gonna cost you. You could expect to spend $30 on any given meal if you're eating out with like table service and stuff, and that can add up. Even if you're trying to find cheap food, it's pretty hard to find something under 10 bucks. However, groceries are not really more expensive here. Like my grocery haul is probably $40 to $70 a week. But I also try and save in this regard, so most people would probably be on the higher end of that spectrum. Groceries are significantly more expensive if you're going to the small like mom and pop shops on every corner. But if you go to the chains like Whole Foods, Target, Trader Joe's, those prices are pretty uniform across the country. Yeah, Whole Foods isn't a cheap place, generally speaking, but progressively over the course of the month, you might spend $50 more than in any other part of the country. This is where money can disappear. This is also where I expose how much I drink. You're honestly probably gonna spend like $100 every single time that you go out. Every weekend I ask myself how it happened, but it always happens. It always happens. The most expensive cocktails I've seen are like $25 with like tip and tax included. The least expensive drinks I've seen are $3, but let me know if you want to know where that spot is in the comments. Otherwise, I'm just gonna gatekeep it. So far, I've just been referring to like a regular, like you just go to the bars kind of night on the weekend. But if you want to do like an event or something, you'll probably spend about $70 for just yourself. For instance, a comedy show is like a $25 ticket, but there's typically a 2-drink minimum per person, so it usually comes out to about 70 bucks. And that's pretty universal across a lot of events. Contrary to popular belief, I think it's cheaper to transport in the city. It's cheaper for transportation. You spend less money to go places. The subway costs $2.90 per trip, and you can take it as far as you want, which can add up if you're taking the subway all the time. However, theoretically, you can hop a turnstile, or theoretically, people will open the emergency doors sometimes, and theoretically, you could go through. All theoretical. Weekly cost of the subway is about 30 bucks, which is about the same as driving a car, but you don't have to pay for maintenance. You don't have to pay for the depreciation or the registration fees or the car, which is expensive. However, I take an electric longboard everywhere, which I know isn't for everyone, but a bike is pretty reasonable. And again, contrary to popular belief, I think it's safer to bike here than in other cities. Hear me out. In New York, drivers expect a biker to be there almost all the time because they are. And because of that, they're always looking, they always have their head out, they're always checking before they're turning, typically. In other cities that aren't as bike friendly, a bike is a surprise, so no one's actually really looking for them. Therefore, it's kind of not as safe. Because of that, cars are a lot more tolerant towards bikers because they expect it as part of New York life. And also, they're not really gonna be going faster than a bike because of the traffic. New York does have dedicated bike lanes. However, I would not say that it makes you safer per se, because you're gonna get dumped out onto a main road at some point anyway. So you're gonna be riding with the cars. You have to expect that. So biking or scootering is super valid of a way to get around. For instance, my electric longboard, it costs me 7 cents to fill up the battery all of the way. And that will take me through all of Manhattan. So my personal travel expenses on a month-to-month basis is like 10 bucks. Yeah, I don't really have any tips here. The taxes suck. Get a good accountant. Staying healthy isn't all that bad here. For instance, we already covered the groceries. That's really not too much more expensive. Plus there's fruit vendors everywhere where you can get good quality fruits for honestly pretty cheap. And because of the level of ambition that exists here within the city, if you go on a run, you are never alone. You can always have running mates. There's a Pilates studio around every corner or a boxing ring in your neighborhood, probably. But of course, you also have your choice of gyms. And before moving here, I heard legend of these $500 a month gyms. And yes, they do exist. But after doing full research before I moved here, I saw that you could probably spend like about $100, maybe like $120 a month on a gym. But then I remembered that Planet Fitness is the same price across the country. So I spend $10 for all of my fitness, and I like to think it works. With all of this being said, I think New York has the highest concentration of free activities of any other city. For instance, picnics in the park are fantastic. Walking down the West Side Highway is a joy. Biking around is one of my favorite activities. And plus, there's always some cool, fun, random thing going on. Like every single weekend, I see a new street being shut down for some major festival. There's also always some networking event going on where you could even get food and drinks there for free. Also, you will make friends and your friends will throw parties. Therefore, you will spend less on drinks at a bar. It's also one of the best cities to be depressed in because if you're depressed and you don't want to leave your room, you're saving money. New York, I firmly believe, is one of the best cities in the world, and if you're thinking about moving here, you should. The whole city is basically one big college campus where we're all just left to our own devices to have fun. Between bopping over to a friend's house because they live around the corner to running into a celebrity in the park, there's just no other place like New York City. It is not a city just for the wealthy. It's a city where you can be an artist or an actor or a barista and still get the full experience of what the city has to offer. New York is a more accessible city than people realize. You just have to be willing to look.